Hello, and welcome to Revamped, a rewatch podcast that revisits my top favorite shows and movies. I'm your host, Brandon Alexander, joined by my co-host,
Courtney Autumn.
Venture with us as we set our sights on the infamous Hellmouth to cover 90s cult classic, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Follow along from the beginning, spoiler-free, as Courtney views the show for the first time and I revisit the series for new takes and a fresh perspective on its narrative.
Each season, every episode, in order, we will follow Buffy Summers and her friends to examine their character development, the show's underlying themes, along with its major story arcs, all while engaging in conversations, sharing our own authentic thoughts and feelings to what's unfolding before us.
So sharpen your stakes, load your crossbows, and join us as we explore the supernatural world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Let's get into the episode. Hello, Revamped listeners. We are back, continuing our journey into another episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Today, we're going to be covering Season 2, Episode 5, Reptile Boy. This episode aired originally on October 13th, 1997, my sister Jennifer's birthday. Happy past birthday, Jennifer. This episode was written and directed by David Greenwalt. He did it all himself. He said, "Joss, give me the reins." This week on Buffy, in hopes to impress two college men, upon their request, Cordelia talks Buffy into attending their frat party with her. However, they have ulterior motives in the form of sacrificing them and another local girl they've captured to a snake demon that bestows good fortune and success in exchange for their offerings. This time it's up to Giles, Willow, Xander, and Angel to save them before it's too late. Our guest cast for this episode, we have Greg Vaughn playing Richard Anderson. He's the only person that I wrote as guest cast. I didn't give a fuck about Tom or any of these other motherfuckers, Callie, whoever these people are, because I don't even know them. I've never seen Tom in anything else. But back to Greg Vaughn, our beacon of sexiness, because I'm going to say Greg Vaughn, Richard, in this episode, he is so hot. He is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And he's still to this day as gorgeous. But he's known best by me as playing, and most of everybody else, playing Dan Gordon from the WB's sister TV show Charmed as Piper's neighbor and love interest in, I think, like season 2. AKA where we are right now. The irony. I think this was before Charmed, though, because I think Charmed came out in like 98. So this is beforehand. I thought it was cool that he appears in this episode because whenever I did see him on Charmed, I was like, oh my God, it's that motherfucker from Buffy. Ugh. Like, because, I mean, obviously this episode is he's pretty sour. He's the sour grape this episode.
Yeah.
Along with Thomas, which I'm sure his full name fucking is.
Thomas. He probably has daddy issues.
This show has the hardest time with trying to find names for men that just everybody's Thomas. We have 2 vampires in the first season named Thomas, Colin, aka Thomas, and I'm doing the script for another episode that we get to in a couple weeks from now, and there's a character named Thomas in that episode.
What the hell?
I'm making jokes in episode 7 about Thomas. It's fun times. Either way, I want to get into your thoughts first on Reptile Boy before I go into a little bit of mine. What did you think of Reptile Boy?
I was actually pretty scared throughout this episode, but it was giving major the pack vibes in the beginning. Well, really all throughout the episode until you really knew what was going on. But yeah, it freaked me out, and I was really just kind of cringed out more than anything the whole entire time. This episode gave me the weekly wigs.
Yeah, rightly so. This episode, unfortunately, is ranked consistently down there with 𝑅𝐸𝒫𝒯𝐸 Eugene and the others that we've mentioned in the past as a least liked in the series.
What?
Personally, I can't agree with that. I know this is hard coming from me, a super biased person when it comes to Buffy, because even the worst episode ever, I still enjoy watching them. And even though it's a filler episode, Monster of the Week and all that, it is kind of giving that out of mind, out of sight interaction that we had with the Cordy and Buffy dynamic again.
Mm-hmm.
And I like seeing these two back together. This time it's a little harsher than the last time, but regardless, it's a fun time with the two of them because I like their dynamic whenever they're in these situations. And this one's extra funny because of all the moments of Cordy saying off the wall shit to Buffy throughout it.
So true.
We also get a really great Willow scene later too, which helps out Buffy so much. So much. I like the story they tell and the demon because the makeup looks pretty cool, even though most people also don't really like the special effects. But for the times, the costuming isn't that bad. The demon kind of looks very similar to Mark from the Puppet Show. as far as
Mhm.
the green scaly stuff and all that, like the body kind of suit.
Yes.
But this time we have the extension, and like they obviously had to put a whole tail on this man and add it onto his torso. It was a lot of work for them, I'm sure, and I'm going to honor their hard work and all that skill that it took to create this for us to watch. I don't think it looks lame as I've seen in some of the reviews. I think it's cool. I don't think it's the best of the best, no, but at least it's not CGI and it's a practical effect. And more than anything, that's one of my favorite things from classic horror movies from like, the 60s to the 80s, the practical effects that they do because they didn't have CGI and high tech
Mhm.
equipment to create this stuff. So I appreciate it for what it is. Anyways, I do feel this one is more about enjoying the characters than it is really driving the story along. I noticed that upon rewatching it, we get the humor and the events with Cordy and Buffy, and there's not any big thing going on. It doesn't add to the overall storyline. We don't really get Spike again in this episode, and we know that he's going to be a big drive for the season, I guess I could say. We at least get good progression forward with Giles and Buffy, also Bangel and even Willow. So it kind of is more of a character development episode
Mhm.
more than anything. It's more just to give us that little bit of extra insight into our world. We were talking last episode in Ink Mommy Girl about how Buffy was just like, okay, I can't go to the dance. Let me just step up and be the Slayer and know that this is my duty. This episode kind of gets back to her trying to seek some normality because she's just feeling a lot of pressure and also feeling the pressure on the side of her with Angel as well. So those kind of worlds collide. Giles is hyper focusing on all of the training, all of the Slayer life, not letting her have what she calls later that
Yeah.
5 minute slice of life that she has from 7 o'clock to 7:05 a.m. Like
Yeah.
all of literal 5 minutes of life to herself and all that. So, but we'll get into it.
Agreed. I will say that it was shocking kind of to see it backtrack to that space of her doing kind of the opposite of what she was doing last episode, where she was more inclined to be responsible and serve her duty and do her training, and she was more about that, and then in this episode she's just like fuck all that. And the better part of it was Giles's pressure, because I think that even though we've seen that evolve in a way, like this was the episode I've noticed him really be that way the most. And
Mhm.
I was shocked. I was like, damn, Giles need to go smoke a joint. He need to go hang out with Joyce.
This is for real.
He's not keeping the positive vibes flowing, that's for sure.
I've got my positive energy flowing.
No positive vibes for Giles. Only the do work, discipline vibes. All
The
right.
dad
Well,
vibes.
yeah, for real. But increased to the actual dad vibes. Well, all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the episode so we can find ourselves an orgy to attend.
In every generation there is a chosen one. She alone will stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness. She is the Slayer.
Opening at the Summers residence, Buffy, Willow, and Xander are chilling on her bed watching a Latin soap opera that has them all confused on its concept, being in another language and all, except Willow. She seems to sort of understand it in her own way because she kind of gives them, she's like, oh no, he's doing all this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, what about this? And she's like, oh, that thing with her feet, it was personal. Like Willow probably doesn't know
It's
anything
so
that's going
random.
on at
No.
all. But
Yeah.
it was funny. And I like how Buffy's over here braiding Willow's hair too. She doesn't actually get far. Sarah Michelle Gellar is trying her hardest to make it look like she's braiding Allison's hair. It was funny. Um, and they go on to comment on how no monsters are about. So it calls for a chill night with the Heshties, aka that's what we call it when me and Courtney hang out. Just in case y'all ever hear us say chill time with the Heshties, me and Courtney are Heshties instead of besties. It makes sense to us. And Willow's like, we could be sneaking tea bags into the bronze. Once again, she's a rebel. She's like, ask for hot water. They continue to be puzzled at the show as we flash over to a campus home as a girl busts through a second floor window, hopping down to the ground. And she must have been taking lessons on jumping out of windows like Angel from season 1, where he hops out Buffy's window after he's a vampire. She throws him through the window in the same episode. He's just all about hopping out some windows. She flees from the site as men in robes start to chase after her. And I have to say, for all the Buffy fandom, it's giving season 7, episode 1 vibes. If you know, you know. And who doesn't know? Courtney. So we're going to leave it at that. She makes it to a wall, hopping over it and into a fucking cemetery of all things. They catch up to her. A man grabbing her, calling her Callie, asks where she's going. The party is just getting started. The men haul her back off to the home as he puts his robe back up on his head and walks off behind them. And then we cue the Buffy theme. Bow, now, now, now.
Meow.
I like the opening scene for the gang because that's the first time we catch glimpses of what a normal night would look like if Buffy weren't the Slayer. Just hanging out, watching some TV,
Mhm.
braiding hair. I like it because we haven't really seen them do this at all. Every episode usually starts with some big problem happening, and it does because obviously we're seeing this, but the gang doesn't know about anything that's going on. They're having a normal night while chaos is starting to
Mhm.
ensue, so they'll soon be finding out. I did notice for the first time really paying attention, Callie, when they drag her off, this actress goes hella limp, and her legs are literally underneath her, and they're like, the men had to physically drag her away. She's like, I ain't walking back to this place. I done broke out, and y'all are taking me back. Y'all can work for this.
Uh-huh, I would've done the same thing.
For
I'm
real,
about
I'm
to be as heavy as possible.
dead a fucking weight. The next day, we open up at school where Cordelia is in the halls schooling some girl on the knowledge that she's gained from what I'm assuming is like a Cosmo magazine article, and has this bitch named Dr. Debbie in it that apparently is like the beacon of hope for all women on how to date guys. She goes on to talk about when a man is talking, you're supposed to really listen and laugh at everything he says, apparently, like this.
That
Uh,
was the worst.
I love it. Did Dr. Debbie teach you how to laugh like this? Or is this just you, Cordelia? Like, Cordelia is so superficial. Of course, you would be doing this laugh that's like, I don't know. If you're going to do a laugh that's supposed to be convincing, you need to be convincing, Cordelia. And you're not giving that, as we see later with Richard when he's like, what are you doing?
No, she was acting so weird that I wrote in my notes, "What the fuck is wrong with Cordy?"
She's just following Dr. Debbie's orders. Anybody else's but her own. Elsewhere in the school, Buffy and Willow are catching up on the fact that Buffy's dreamed about Angel 3 nights in a row, and Buffy's fit here, the giraffe print pants and white top, love it, but also it's a big thing because she wears this exact same outfit again in the 13th episode this season, and it has a big, big, big significance. I don't think I've ever
Ooh.
paid this attention before, but it has a direct correlation to the combo they're having in this scene, and obviously we'll circle back when we get to episode 13. I'll make it make sense then, but I'm giving you some breadcrumbs, so please put them in your pocket for episode 13. Anyway, Buffy is mentioning how they did ... stuff, aka sexy things. One of those dreams where you could feel his lips and smell his hair like surround sound. They're so right for each other, except the vampire thing. She should ask him out for coffee sometime, Willow suggests. The non-relationship drink of choice, not a date. And then Xander butts in, but the convo is dead, passing by Cordelia, who is there talking still about college men, comparing them to Xander. She's like, I mean, look at that. Like, damn. He just walked up. He hadn't even said anything to her. And obviously they exchange words of her happening to be dating a Delta Zeta Kappa, as she says, as she feathers her fingers through those little fucking mall bangs that she's got going on. I was like,
Wait,
this is the
hold
most
on, I need you to explain that term to me.
mall bangs.
Yeah,
Okay, so think back to the 90s or even the 80s, and you remember those like glamour shots? This is the best way I can like put it out there.
I
So
have one from
people
when I was,
always
like,
had
9 years
bangs, and
old.
women love to feather their bangs back too, but it's like the heavy, heavy curled or round brush bumped up bang to where it's
Yeah.
like projected in the front. Now, she didn't have it so hardcore. I'm being a bit dramatic when I say mall bang because Cordelia is like on the cusp of it. I do have to also mention now she's dating a Delta Zeta Kappa. Literally last episode, she was all over Devin, who's in Dingo's Ate My Baby with Oz, and all up his ass. And Cordelia really gets around, doesn't she? Because, Mitch started this whole sequence of men for her because after Mitch, she had Kevin. And then after Kevin, she had.
She had a thing with Daryl for a second.
Oh, well, yes, back in the day.
No, in present day.
Well, sort of. More like Daryl had a thing with Cordelia, aka her head. Xander attempts to retort with her, but she calls him out on his pizza delivery career. Everybody's always saying what Xander is going to be doing. Like Willow said it in the pack. She's like, "You'll end up working at the pizza place," or a low budget, low career, not high driven job. Not go to college. All of those things. All the things. As usual, the bell rings when he joins up with Buffy and Willow, and she remembers that she's supposed to be meeting with Giles, aka 10 minutes ago in the library. He surely won't be upset, though, with no paranormal activity afoot. And then we flash over to the library and some cutscene transition magic as he scolds her. He's like,
Just because the paranormal is more normal and less para of late is no excuse for tardiness or letting your guard down.
Yeah.
but she has not done that. So she thinks as he continues,
You yawned your way through weapons training last week. You skipped hand-to-hand entirely. Are you going to be prepared if a demon springs up behind you and does this? Ow!
stepping behind her, swinging an arm at her, and she just catches his arm and twists it behind his back. Of course, he isn't a demon, so she should let go, he says. And I was like, got him! This was really funny because Giles be thinking Buffy is going to be slacking and not know, but doesn't he realize this is the Slayer? She can sense everything that's about to fucking happen, essentially. She's not as aloof as you suspect, Giles. So the fact that he comes down so hard on her, like in the beginning of this episode, I'm like, clearly she's doing fine. Like, she's done
Well,
everything else up to here.
She continues to prove her point also, so I'm just like, good for you, Buffy. Let your actions speak louder than words at the end of the day.
Yeah, for real. She's a good model for actions being louder than words. He goes on a tired speech of the Hellmouth and honing her skills we've heard way too many times, and she isn't having it though, because the little slice of life that we mentioned she gets 5 minutes out of the day isn't enough for her. He has no clue what it's like to be a 16-year-old and a girl and the Slayer, and also having to stake vampires while you're having fuzzy feelings towards one. This silencing him for a bit before he goes into stating she has a sacred duty and purpose. How many others could say that? He steps into gear to tell her that she will be meeting him for the training after class ends, or like he said, at the end of period 6. I was like, oh shit, he's scolding fucking her. And that she will patrol right after and not spend 1 second dawdling with her friends either. She pouts and he says that it's not going to get to him, and she turns it on even more, and then he has to look away because he's like, it's not getting to me. But it is. I thought this was a cute interaction, and like we were saying, I just don't get why he's being so hard on her. And obviously we get his little speech at the end as well, but
I totally agree, but I like that she fires back with basically emotional manipulation.
fairly though, because that is true. He doesn't know how it is, because when I'm not slaying and I'm not trying to just be a normal girl, I've got Principal Snyder at my fucking shit, and school's hard to attend, quite literally 2 episodes ago. Well, we cut to the end of the day where she is sitting out front the school, dawdling with her friends. Defiance at its best. Willow calling out Buffy's name as Cordy comes rushing by them, seeing her college guys come pulling up to the school. They watch her interaction with the guy we find she's dating named Richard, and surprise, he's revealed to us as the guy from the opening scene that grabbed the girl on the loose. And I'm like, oh, here we go. I have to comment on his perfect highlights and coiffed feathered back hair. He's got like the layers that just like give the businessman cut, very swoosh and whoosh, like looks like he's done the ad for a Suave commercial or something. That's why, all the things.
Totally.
But he has a good head of hair. He always has. Even on Charmed, his hair is longer than it is in this, and he is so hot on that show.
You can tell he's like probably the ideal image for a guy from that era of time, you know what I mean? I feel like all the girls would have been like, holy shit, this is like the perfect specimen of a man. So yeah.
He is gifted, like just being born. He's got that naturally defined chiseled chin. He's got the little bit of like tiny, not over eccentric cleft to his chin. So he's like your run-of-the-mill classic sexy man. He takes notice along with his passenger college mate to Buffy, then invites Cordy to their party at their frat house, and she just laughs. Not realizing this is not what the magazine meant. You should be listening right now, not laughing. And he is confused, but she clears it up, saying that she would love to go. He is pleased with this decision, but is curious who her friend is, eyeing Buffy over there standing with her friends. Cordelia claiming,
Her? Oh, she's not my friend.
And the other dude, Richard, is like, she's amazing. And Cordelia automatically corrects herself, and she's like,
she's more like a sister, really. We're that close.
Here we go, lying to feed her own.
For her own gain.
For her own gain, yes. If so, they need to be introduced. So Cordelia's like, fuck. Then goes over to Buffy, grabbing her hand to say, come on, Richard and his frat bros want to meet you. And Buffy doesn't want to meet any frat boys, though. Cordelia's like, and if there was a god, don't you think he'd keep it that way? Yanking her over there, as Xander, of course, has to call out this awful event of Buffy meeting boys. This dude, Richard, is gross, calling her sweetheart as soon as she comes up. And I'm like, are you interested in Cordelia and trying to court her, quote unquote? But yet you looking at Buffy and being like, biting your lip, hey, sweetheart. I'm like, mm-mm. But also you can call me sweetheart. Buffy's smart. And she's like, nah, brah. And Cordy forces her to stay longer. She's still holding on to her hand. She like rips her back, and giving Buffy the chance to meet Tom, the guy who is appearing to be with Richard. And he's also appearing to be more charming than his sinister seeming frat fuckboy. Unfortunately, she falls for his crap while Xander watches on, commenting on the whole exchange too. You can hear Cordy doing that laugh too in the background while they're talking out of sight, off camera. Shit had me dying. Like Buffy's trying to talk and I just hear in the background, ah, At least Cordelia's laugh isn't as bad as Janice from Friends.
Oh.
Tom tries to get Buffy to come to the frat party, and she mentions being involved with someone, but before the convo can progress any further, Giles comes screaming her name, pointing at his watch. He's like, come the fuck on. She thinks it was nice to meet Tom. I say it that pointedly. She thinks it was nice to meet Tom, leaving him to head inside as Xander comments how he hates these guys. Willow clearly also low-key swooning over them as well, because she's like, with their charming good looks and movie commercial hair or whatever she said, and then she's like, I'm hating. I was like, you're just trying to agree with Xander because he's your best friend. Then we flash over to the library where Giles is attempting to attack Buffy for training, not holding back at all either, which she is fine with. And as usual, she takes him out in 1.8 seconds. And he's like, okay, you can go patrol now. See you tomorrow. I'm like, you made her waste her time to come to the library for 4 minutes for you to let her watch you put all your little pads on that you always need and then attack her. And then I love it too because he goes to hop at her and she just moves out of the way and like pushes him, and he like slides across the fucking table like swim style or whatever you want to call it, like body, I don't know, he just like fucking face plants the table. And then we get the cut from the camera in his face like looking back at Buffy, and he's just like, all right, you're on patrol, see you tomorrow. Buffy fashion peeped the baby blue that she was wearing. I didn't like the top per se, but it is baby blue and it looks so good on Summer Color as usual. As we transition to nighttime in the graveyard, Buffy patrols, coming across a broken necklace on the ground. Plot convenience, because how the fuck in the dark she see this tiny ass broken bracelet on the ground. I don't even know what's happening there. And on it displays the letters ENT. Angel calling out behind her, spooking her to say that there's blood on it. He can smell it. Leading into this awkward ass interaction of her trying to ask him out to do something not blood related, aka like a date. He wonders, but she doesn't say date. He's like, yeah, you mean coffee or something. I'm like, damn, he already knows. He's been talking to Willow too. Just like Buffy was talking to Miss Calendar behind Giles' back, and also Giles about the conversation. Willow is like, as I always say, the biggest Bangel stand. They both admit that this is weird and point out the reality of their age difference. Math that Buffy has done, because she's like, I've done the math. He points out that she doesn't know what she wants, but she does. It's out of this conversation. She goes to leave, but he stops her, saying if they were to date, they both know one thing is going to lead to another. And she's like, but one thing already has led to another. It's dramatic. Little late for reading the warning labels, she states, and he just wants to protect her. This could get out of control, he states. She claims, isn't that the way it's supposed to be? He grabs her forcefully, startling her, pulling her closer to him, saying,
this isn't some fairy tale. When I kiss you, you don't wake up from a deep sleep and live happily ever after.
Her saying back to him,
No. When you kiss me, I want to die.
then runs off from him as he looks pained.
That was intense, like that moment. I was like,
Right?
oh gosh.
Dramads. It's giving us a reference also to Disney movies like Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, where the kiss from eternal slumber helps them awaken. And also, I get it though, because Buffy is so torn on what to do. Angel clearly is too. Like, these two want each other so bad, but they are still in the stages of denial. Like they were back in season 1, whenever they were like, we should give each other some time apart. And then they, had 5 episodes where we didn't even see Angel anymore, because we're like, oh, he's not on the show. But they're denying themselves the full immersion into dating. And for possibly good reason. They could be in a problematic situation. Her being a Slayer, him being a vampire, him being 240 years old, aka dead, and her being alive. It's just like Willow was saying in that episode as well. Buffy's going to continue to age, and that's going to be a small, well, not a small, because by the time she's 80, she's going to be decrepit and whatever. And Angel's still going to be looking like he was 19 when he died. All the things. But it brings up that kind of context, So, I completely get why she and he are torn on fully immersing themselves in the betrothed passion that they're experiencing.
Well, I think they're both trying to be responsible too, because who knows, what could happen and how that impacts everybody else, especially around Buffy, because you never see Angel hang out with nobody. So,
which says a lot for Buffy too, because obviously she's a 16-year-old girl, and for her to have this mentality to say, I need to take this with a grain of salt at this time, and him being 240 something years old, he is the adult. He's got a lot of respect for not only himself, but for Buffy as well, to honor her agency as a person and say that, like, I need to be the bigger man here and like the adult and step up and say, like, or continue to put out there that like this just doesn't need to really truly happen, even though like it's really hard because it's the double-edged sword at the same time, because they both want this so bad they can't help the attraction that they feel to each other.
Totally.
It's
They're
heads.
twin flames.
They really are. Like this bitch, I'm gonna say it, and this is the biggest spoiler of all time. She doesn't ever stop loving Angel. Neither do I.
You're like, I get it.
All right, great. The next day at school, Buffy's leaving class as Cordy cuts her off to give her fake ass compliments. She just comes in this door too, like hot. She clearly didn't have the same class with Buffy, and as soon as she comes in, she's like complimenting the fuck at her. She's like, Buffy, have you lost weight? Like she didn't even say hi. She just goes right up talking about Buffy's weight and hair. You know, she was outside and she's like, all right, comment on her hair, comment on her weight. Just be nice to her. Fill her with compliments, even though I hate this bitch. But she stops herself because she can't be dishonest with her. She's like, the hair is a little... I'm like... I did not like Buffy's hair either. It's too curled. Like it's not like overdone. It doesn't look like ringlets or curly Sue, but it's just like 90s curls, and it's not like the nice wavy looks we have nowadays or, you know, anything cute. It's not
It just
ugly,
didn't
but
make
it's...
sense to me. I was like, when did we do our hair like that?
I mean, it's better than the curly Sue shit that was the fucking perms that were going on in the 80s, I'll just say.
You are right about
As
that.
a hairdresser, clearly I've been through the time revolution of every fucking thing. Had stuff come back in my chair. My poor mother, she thankfully isn't as bad now, but like for the longest time, she would not let feather back bangs and a fucking crop cut looking like Princess Diana all of life.
My
Like,
mom.
yeah, exactly. Your mom and my mom basically have the same exact hairstyle.
Yeah, I told my mom to
Still to
grow
this
her
day.
hair out. I was like, please grow it out. Just
I
grow it out.
know. I used to always be like, Mom, let's do an A-line bob on you. And she's like, I can't grow my hair out that long. She would try for 2 seconds and she'd be like, no, I need you to cut my bangs back up so I can put the round brush and the curling iron and all the
Give me
fucking
my bangs.
all the fucking Aquanet back in there. My hair's already ruined from hairspray, and you just fry my hair the fuck up and make me look like Carrie.
Forgot about Carrie.
Anytime I say hair fried, immediately Carrie pops in my head.
I mean, I can't blame you there.
Anyways, enough about bad hair. She goes on to tell Buffy that she wants her to attend the college frat boys party with her because they basically said if Buffy doesn't come, Cordelia can't go, which is really fucked up too. Like the fact they gave her that ultimatum, they're like, well, if she doesn't come and you don't bring your friend, you can't attend. And I'm like, Cordelia, can't you see a fucking red flag when it's literally smacking
I'm
you
saying.
in the face?
Thank you. I'm saying that there were so many red flags, but this was like the start of it. And I was just like, really? That just doesn't make sense. It would be weird to me either way. If they were like, no, you got to come by yourself, I'd be like, no. You know what I mean? But then now it's kind of more weird that you're insisting that I can't even show up. And I'm the one that like was talking to this dude to begin with. So I'm like, what are you talking about?
These
No.
motherfucker crackheads. And then when they arrive at the fucking house is literally painted all red and there's red lights glowing onto it. So there's not really, but I'm just saying, like, literally they pull up and there's a sound system going, bah, bah, bah.
They
They're like,
arrive and there's a huge red flag waving off the house.
Makita's down in his well and he's like, ooh, my Uber Eats order has arrived.
Literally.
Okay, anyways. This poses a problem for Cordelia because this is Richard Anderson that they're talking about, as in Anderson Farms, Anderson Aeronautics, and Anderson Cosmetics. She has a fake sob. She like literally plays that all off. She's like, and it's fake as fuck. I'm like, you're fake sobbing right now, you dumb bitch. But whatever, we love it. Further explained that these guys are rich, Buffy, and clearly she needs to be in line with them trying to convince her to go, but it doesn't take much because Buffy states she will go because in her head she's like just eyeing off to the side the whole time, and she's like, no, I need this. I need to do this because this is different. This is out of context for like how I'm living life and I'm fucking tired of it. So why not go hang out with Cordelia since I'm already miserable?
Mm-hmm.
Cordelia's confused, but snaps right past that to be pleased with this decision. She's like, great, I'll drive. And I'm like, oh fuck. Commenting also with excitement.
Oh, Buffy, it's like we're sisters with really different hair.
She can't let go of that hair.
Let's hope Cordelia will at least drive Buffy back home later, because the last time we saw her give a ride to Angel or offer Angel to ride with her, we had the whole conversation about like she just dropped Angel off at her house and he had to walk home. So you know Buffy was in line to walk home from this party. Like once Cordelia was done with her arriving at the party so she could get her ticket into the door, she was like, who's Buffy? Which is essentially what she does this episode anyways. It's just the start of all the funny things that she says and the fucking just outlandish bullshit Cordelia's got going on. We end that scene and cut over to the basement of the frat house where the boys are back in robes, pledging the lives of their new recruits over to the Deltas and, of course, the demon Makita, whom they serve. During this oath, they cut diamonds into the inductee's chest with a sword, and yay, this boy is now evil and baptized in Makita's unholy name. Praise Makita. They cheers and the party begins when they toast their beers, whooping and carrying on as some, dumb college fucking frat guys do. Richard walking over to rudely as fuck say to Callie, we can see her chained to the wall now, and she's like begging him to let her go, and he's like, okay, I will. On opposite day, she just starts to cry to herself, and then he walks off. And during this, I'm like, okay, but this is definitely different from your standard pledge ceremonies that we see in like TV and film represented, iconically. Usually we always see the frat party, the pledges doing unnecessary bullshit, having to eat dirt out the ground, or like, chug fucking beers until they vomit everywhere and then still having to continue to drink, just shit that you've seen in frat media.
Mm-hmm.
But this one obviously took a hugely different take, and I was really confused by it. And then all of a sudden, whenever they ended the fucking thing, the kegs and beer and obnoxious music cued, and I was like, oh, here we are. And it's back. At school, Buffy has clued Willow in that she's actually going to the frat party. Willow's curious why she changed her mind, and Buffy admits because of Angel, and she gets really excited thinking that they're going on a date there. Always loving how down bad Willow is for Angel. Buffy's like, no, and then she like goes to walk off from them really quickly, and she's like, I'm actually going with Cordelia. Willow is alerted while Xander thinks Cordelia is much better of a pair for Buffy than Angel. Angel treats Buffy like a child apparently and barely speaks to her, and Tom seems like more the normal vibe she needs at the moment. Xander is pissed off at that idea. Can't be having Buffy with other men, as per usual. And also fashion watch on Willow's fit, because she looks like a whole ass watermelon with this pink top on that's trimmed in green. And then she's got these jeans on that have like different colored stars printed across them largely. There's like 6 or 7 stars on the whole thing. I'm just like,
Watermelon.
Willow, why are you always goofy? It's Watermelon Willow. It's the WW, Watermelon Willow. I don't know. She looked like a Jolly Rancher.
That's literally what I was gonna say. That's so funny. I was like, well, that don't make no sense, but it kind of does, obviously, if you got there in your head too.
Over in the library, Giles is gassing himself up like he's the shit with that mini sword. And he's like, will you be ready if a vampire is behind you? And he's like playing around with a sword in there. Okay, Giles, I see you in here. He's doing his own training, but he's being goofy with it. And the 3 creeping up on him, walking in to catch him playing with his toys. And they just like ignore all this because he has the sword behind his back and all that. And Buffy shows him the bracelet that she found when she was on patrol the night before. Apparently Willow's seen something like this before and she can't remember what it is. Buffy acknowledging to them that it's broken in 2 and how there's traces of blood on it. And Giles is like, oh, I can't visibly see any. And she's like, Angel was there and he could smell it. Giles over here sniffing it now too. Like, I don't know if you noticed it, but he put it to his nose and started smelling it. And I was like, I've never paid that attention before. Okay, why would you sniff that if there's blood on it? He's like, am I a vampire? Can I smell it? Will you be ready if a vampire tries to smell your bracelet? Gee. Blood in Sunnydale, what a surprise. Willow remarking sarcastically. Xander, knowing exactly what he's doing, tells Giles Buffy should make the rounds tonight while they figure out who the bracelet belongs to. And Giles is like, oh my god, Xander, you have for once came up with the best idea evs. Buffy tells Giles that she is unavailable, actually. She has a mountain of homework, and how dear old Joyce hasn't been feeling well after taking too many edibles the night before. And she could really use her doting daughter's help around the home. And to round off this truth-telling, Buffy's not feeling so well herself. Giles agrees if she feels unwell, then she should definitely stay home with her mother. Buffy is like, yes, exactly that. Then they leave, and out in the halls, Xander and Willow are just staring at Buffy as they walk, and she's like, well, say it. And Buffy demands that to Xander, and he's not gonna. But who will? Willow will, and is pleased to state, you lied to Giles. She wasn't lying, though. She was just protecting him from information that he couldn't digest properly. Willow scolding her.
Like, you don't have a sick mother, but you'd rather go to a frat party where there's going to be drinking and older guys and probably an orgy.
Because Willow's heard that this is what happens at frat parties, apparently. Buffy implies that she's always so busy saving the world, she just needs to have fun for once. So that's what she's going to do. Have some fun. As we get a round of cutscene transition magic to her sitting with Cordelia in the lounge as she states to Buffy, this isn't about fun. Of course. Love when the show does this, but it's hilarious because this isn't about a fun night out for Buffy. And she's probably like, fuck, I'm going back on my idea to go with you now. But this is about her duty to help Cordelia achieve permanent prosperity, giving her a list of do's and don'ts, which include don't wear black, silk, chiffon, spandex. They are all Cordy's trademarks. And also not to do that weird thing with her hair. She's like, what weird thing with my hair? And she's like, don't interrupt. um, She says, do be interested if someone speaks to her at the party. Do be polite and laugh at the appropriate intervals, teaching Buffy how to laugh like her. Don't do it, Buffy. Don't laugh like that. Cordelia arrives at the main do, which is do lie to Joyce about where they're going, because there will be adult things happening at this party, like drinking. Xander and Willow come up, and he asks Cordelia about her night of whoring herself out. Like, oh my God. He's like, you just going with a halter top tonight? Cordelia snaps back about how he's envious and how he could belong to a fraternity to the rich and the powerful in the bizarro world. And then he is silenced the fuck out. Buffy tries to invite them along, but Xander's like, nah, I gotta digest, using the phrase from moments ago that she used on him because he can't handle the words that Cordy just whipped out at him. He and Willow take a seat near them in the lounge area. Willow is still stunned that she lied to Giles. Xander informs that he's going to go to the party to keep an eye on Buffy because the frat guys creep him out. Willow's like, you want to protect her and prove that you're just as rich as those snotty guys? And he's like, to both. And then she's like, and maybe catch an orgy? And he's like, if it's on early. And this scene's cute too, because just like them being the bestest buds as usual, they're like sharing a Coca-Cola in between this exchange, like taking sips from the same can. I like how they add this in there, and I wonder if they directed them to do this, or just like Nikki and Allie was just like, hey, we're gonna do this because we're supposed to be friends. Like they talked about it before the scene started. And they're like, let's flip candies or do these weird things, and they're like, we'll just keep it in. Who knows? We don't. Also, in this exchange, while they're talking, Cordelia is getting Buffy fed up with her, and Buffy just like slams her head down on her books.
I wrote in my notes, I was like, proper response.
That shit was funny. Buffy's like, I am done. And she's not, though, because we cut to that night as Cordy and Buffy arrive at the frat house. Cordelia running into the back of someone's fucking car as well. She's driving like a bat out of the hellmouth. I was like, calm down, Cordy. This ain't the high school. You know how she was driving in Prophecy Girl, fucking through the doors and shit. I do want to note her Queen C license plate before we forget, because I have this sticker on my Jeep.
I love that. I want one.
All right, great. I'll get you one, and you can put it on your car.
Yes, I will.
They exit the car and start to enter the house, and Buffy is super slow paced behind Cordelia. And I love how Buffy wore a black dress, even though Cordy told her not to wear black.
I know, I noticed that too. And isn't it like silk looking too? And she was like, don't do either of
It's
those things. And
chiffon.
she's like, I'll do both.
Buffy's like, I don't give a fuck. Inside, Richard spots them and brings them over drinks, welcoming them. They take them, and Buffy has to ask about it containing alcohol, and he just says it's a smidge. And Cordy snarks at Buffy, and this shit makes me laugh every single time because she nudges her, and she's like,
come on, Buffy, it's just a smidge.
And Buffy is so smart, though, because she holds off. And Richard's dumbass, he's like, when I was your age, I wasn't into adult things either. And I'm like, what, all of 5 fucking years ago, you dick licker?
I know, that's what I wrote down. I was like, what a dick. That wasn't even necessary. We already know you're a dick just by the looks of you, so you don't even need to say anything.
Liquor, dick licker. Because he's in a frat fraternity. They've all fucked each other.
Probably.
Cordelia goes off with Richard to see their multimedia room that she knows nothing but everything about. And I love that exchange because he's like, you want to go see this like area? And she's like, you mean the one with like, surround sound, TV, satellite radio, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. Want to show me? And then she leaves Buffy alone since she's the happiest by herself. I do have to say this is a foul move for Cordelia. And honestly, Cordelia is still kind of a bitch here because she not only invites Buffy to this party because she has to, but she uses Buffy to suit her own needs and then just dumps her at the most convenient time and in a very cruel way. I'm just like, okay, you got what you needed. Now she's like done with her, but you're nice to her sometimes.
I know, I felt the same way though, but I was kind of like, this is a couple steps back for the progress Cordy's made, like as far as her character is concerned, because we've seen her do consistently well as far as like mingling with the group, and now she's just being a very typical bitch, basically.
Yeah.
Like she was in season 1. So yeah, I don't know.
It's not
It was a lot.
Yeah. Cordelia's mind just doesn't go there when it thinks to like thinking of other people most of the time. She really, like I said, is going to do something that's going to suit her own needs at the end of the day and, scratch her itch before anybody else's.
Yeah,
Ugh.
totally.
At a window to the frat house, we see Xander sneak inside of it and bust his ass. And we all laugh, actually, collectively, when we watch this scene. Fashion police, because this pledge guy that's walking around looking like a Playboy bunny dressed up, minus the ears, and Xander's in this horrid ass red polo and khaki pants. I'm just like, bruh, like, what is happening?
Why did he come dressed like a 55-year-old man?
He combed his hair. There's at least that.
Exactly. No one else probably got their hair combed over there.
Yeah, Mitch, he borrowed Mitch's comb. Remember the one Buffy had to go to the room to get? Principal Snyder was like, Mitch doesn't need his comb right now. Well, Mitch doesn't need it anymore either because he's not on the show and he left it to Xander. Xander almost runs into Buffy, but is distracted by food, aka me, because yeah, that's the first place I hit whenever I go to any kind of party where they've got a fucking smorgasbord of food going around. Speaking on the pledges again really quick though, do they only accept the ones that are okay with the murder of girls once a year? Do they have to pass the vibe check on the fact that some demon grants them wealth? Like, what's the deal? What do you think?
I know, I know. I was watching this with Meredith, and every time we saw anything like that happening, Meredith was like, "How do you think they recruited for this fraternity, aka cult?" And I was like, "I don't know, that is a good point. Like, how do you scout for it? Like, you know what I mean? Who's cut out from like just watching them or something, or are they born into this position? Like, I need to know."
Some of them probably, like Richard and probably Tom, obviously as well. They're probably part of the lineage of people that have attended the school in the past, that we
Mhm.
hear about later on at the very end of the episode.
Yeah.
They're predecessing Delta Zeta Kappas. But like the new people come in, obviously, when you're like doing an open house for the new college year, you have pledges, want to pledge your fraternity. So like they probably have some bystanders come up that's like, oh, I hear great things about this. Everybody that's ever went there goes on to like be super rich and just like
Mhm.
excel in things. And we don't know why, but like, maybe it's just the energy, blah, blah, blah. So they go to like do it and they're just normal Joe, like me from Sumter going to pledge at this fucking place. And then I
Mhm.
show up and they're like, listen, we're going to tell you something. And if you don't like this, we're going to kill you after, aka feed you to McKeeds.
So you
But
better like it.
are you okay with us killing girls once a year so that way you can have all the riches that you've heard about and like live a life of luxury? And most are probably super enticed by this. And they're like, yes, exactly. Let's do
Mhm.
that. But then some are probably like, I'm going to go down the street to the Delta Zeta News. you know?
True.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I was like, how does this happen? I love how like I get usually every episode's a hot take from Meredith in your conversation. Like I feel like Meredith's the silent podcast host of this series that
She
we're doing.
really is, and she's really good for, like she has to remind herself often when she's watching stuff, she's like, "It's just a movie, Meredith, don't ask too many questions," she'll do stuff like that
Hmm.
because she tries to get super technical, and it's always with shit like that when she's, like, saying the most random, like, observation. She's like, "So how do you think that they recruited for these dudes?" I'm like, "Honestly, I didn't even think about it." I'm like, "They're just there."
We're gonna have to definitely have Meredith do a season 3 episode with us, 100%.
Yeah.
Tell Meredith she's doing season 3, episode 2 with us.
Okay.
That way we can immerse ourselves in the new season together and then go on with our first guest in episode 2. All right, anyways, getting back to the episode, we're back with Buffy again, and she appears lonely and sad, contemplating her drink but not sipping any. Watching couples dance, bumming her out even more. Some guy raises his glass to her across the room and she cheers him, finally taking a sip of her drink. And then some other guy that's plastered out of his fucking mind is about to charge at her, I guess. He's like, woo wee girl, yeah, blah, blah, and does all the things.
It's
Dumb.
so weird.
But it's just so Tom can appear and interrupt his attempt and steal Buffy away for him to dance with her, which they do. And he's glad that she decided to come. In conversation, he tells her this, but senses her bummed out, non-positive vibes flowing, calling her out. They chat about why Buffy shouldn't be there in her opinion, responsibilities and all, leading him to say that she is too mature. She should relax and enjoy herself, aka get ready to be fed to a demon. He comments also along the way that he talks too much, as this is important for later. He also pulls that move too, where he's like, home dude is gone, you're safe now, we can stop dancing, you can go on about your night. And he calls the guy Hulk in this moment as well, and I never noticed that before, but that's obviously a Marvel reference to the Hulk. And I was like, Hulk smash, and I was like, let me not say that on cam because Courtney's gonna get triggered. We got Xana last episode, now we got Melina on this one. But that guy was deaf given that. And Buffy's like, nah, I like dancing. Let's slow dance some more. And then we cut back over to Xander making a fool of himself as the frat bros taking notice to him that he's a crasher and coming up behind him and hauling him off shouting, new pledge, new pledge, new pledge. Oh shit, they're just going to use Xander because they ain't going to tell him shit about shit and not actually have him pledge because obviously he's still a high school student. But I was like, Lord have mercy. Buffy is seen outside for some fresh air and stepping onto some broken glass, looking up to the window that's now boarded up, aka the same one the homegirl came crashing through in the beginning. Tom finds her again, asking if she's okay, and then not so pleasant Richard comes up with 3 drinks, Tom offering a toast to maturity, Buffy giving in finally, what the hell, and tossing it back like Xander and Teacher's Pet with that martini, because she's tired of maturity. And I will say that she takes that drink back a lot better than Xander did, because when he drank that martini, he's like, like Buffy just took it back and had a straight face. She was like, whatever. And I was like, all right, great. They successfully roofied you. Like, fuck. No, Buffy, spit that shit out. You better go to the bathroom and throw up right now. But
literally.
in the library, we see Giles and Willow are trying to decipher the missing letter from the bracelet, arriving at K being the first letter to the ending ENT, Kent, which stands for the name of the preparatory school that's just outside of town. And like Willow's all like, aha, that's where I've seen this. And I'm like, of course. She then pulls up the school's newsletter to see if there's anything about ... a missing girl. Giles fills in as we see the computer screen displaying the school's post on Callie being missing. It's like, our hearts are with you bullshit. They made a whole post for this bitch, but I was like, ugh. And like, who remembers too back in the day in the 90s whenever you could click on the computer screen with the little hand and like click and drag your like the frame around, like you saw it do that. Like I was like, oh my god, blast from the past. I was like, where's Jenny Calendar at? Not here this episode. Back at the party, the frat bros are laughing, applying lipstick to Xander's lips, and these men need not ever work in the beauty industry because they have the shittiest skills and awful use of this Kylie Jenner Jeffree Star cosmetic lip kit, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Oops, I mean Anderson Cosmetics, because this is probably Richard's lipstick that he got for free from his family. Xander is not pleased as we see him standing there in a bra and skirt they've somehow managed to coerce him into wearing, yelling at him to dance, pretty boy, dance. And I was like, they throw a wig on him as he does. And I was like, what did you think of this?
I so badly wanted to feel bad for him, but I couldn't because he was like,
Xander.
He was the only life source that Buffy was gonna have, because as soon as I saw her knock that drink back, I was like, well, it's over for you, friend.
Thank God Xander's there.
Yeah, and then that was my afterthought. So when I saw that this was happening, I was like, fuck. But I was like, if nothing else, it might serve as a good distraction. Maybe something else will happen. I don't know, but that was not the case.
Xander is an ugly woman. He need not ever cross-dress.
No, not his thing.
No drag for him. He's a drag enough on himself. We start to see Buffy walking by looking dizzy as fuck, fumbling alongside the wall, moving up to the staircase. But before she does though, like she passes underneath that plant and it like tangles in her hair. And I just like laughed to myself because Sarah Michelle Gellar had to do this physically. And I'm like, I wonder if she just used the prop because they're like, just act dizzy by the wall and then go up the stairs. And she's like, I'm going to run in this plant, like have it attack my hair because it like gets tangled up in her. I was just laughing. I was like, Sarah, calm down. She heads upstairs, finding a bedroom and a bed that she can just lie down on for a bit so the room can stop spinning as she passes out onto it. And then Richard is seen coming into the room 2 seconds later. I was like, are we following this bitch around watching for her to like have this moment? Like not the moment in the room, but just like to know that she's like going down. Giving off them, as we keep saying, the pack vibes as he rolls Buffy over. And then Tom comes in the room freaking out, thankfully saving Buffy's ass, because she's a sacrifice for later. But he's like, get away from her. And he's like, I wasn't doing nothing. It's because, this bitch is for the pleasure of whom they serve. I was like, I mean, beforehand, you don't know that when you're just a watcher, when he says the pleasure of whom we serve, we assume because the rapey vibes are going on that maybe they're going to like give it to some demon thing to have sex with or something, because that's what I was thinking. I was like, ew, this is kind of skeevy. We know that's not the case now.
Could have been Miss French so she can, have her eggs fertilized and whatnot.
Oh my God, essentially. Yes, exactly. And then as they comment on the fact that this is from Makito, he's like, this goes for the other one too. too. And then we pan over to the side of the bed and Cordelia is laying there fucking passed out against the damn side table. And I'm like, okay, Buffy was drunk and dizzy coming into this, and I guess she just really looked at the bed. But when she came in that room, you would have had to have seen Cordelia laying there beside the right-hand side of this bed. Like, but you know, Buffy's poisoned
My
at this
whole
point.
thing was this too, because Buffy ended up in there on her own, and we don't know how Cordy ended up in there. Obviously, she may have had that same journey of
She
feeling
passed out in the
dizzy and
entertainment room.
finding herself into that room, but I went on this whole thing in my head where I was like, did they literally calculate this out to the point in which they, like, left this one door propped open knowing these bitches would go upstairs once they're dizzy trying to find somewhere to lay down, and then they would both end up together in the same room, making it easier for them to retrieve them later.
Which is crazy too, though, because the door was propped open, and
Just like a little invitation, you
like
know what I
if
mean? Like, "Come
somebody,
in, come on in."
but anybody could have walked up there and been like, oh, like let's look around this rich people's like frat house, you know?
Or, like,
Anybody could, and
notoriously, people go somewhere to make out or something, you know, like,
exactly.
couples would have found their way in there.
Just walking through the house and wanting to see the place, you know. But like they would have had to walk in there and be like, oh, wait, hold on, there's a passed out bitch in here. Like, I mean, they did have her propped up where they were like, oh, like this bitch is clearly way drunk, and people would have probably out of sight, out of mind of that, and just be like, oh, we gonna leave her be. Like, let's not check on her or anything like
Everyone's
that.
paying attention to Xander.
I don't know what's wild. I do want to note too, like whenever Buffy first comes in the room, she like bumps into that statue that's like a fucking unicorn or some
She says
shit.
sorry.
She says sorry to it. She's like, oh, sorry. I was like, what?
Oh, that literally
That's why
would've
she didn't notice Cordelia. She noticed the damn statue as a person. She thought Cordelia on the floor was a statue. All right. I also wrote in my notes that this also mirrors a similar scene in American Horror Story Coven as well, with like the rapey vibes. Because I remember I told you about like Madison flipping the bus where that killed all the frat boys
Mhm,
and stuff.
mhm.
I really am starting to think that, because I have another comment later about another American Horror Story Coven reference from this fucking season so far. And I'm like, did Ryan Murphy watch this season of Buffy and be like, I'm going to steal a bunch of different little plot points from it, little things to use in my show? Because
Probably.
it's super relevant. When I say it later, like it's going to click into two, and you're going to be like, this is exactly the case. Back at the library, Giles and Willow are still reading into Callie's disappearance. Assuming this being Sunnydale, they can rule out something good has happened to her. Giles reaches for the phone to call Buffy, but Willow is like, fuck, you can't do that, covering for her to remind him of her and her mom being sick, helping buy some time before they need to actually disturb her, you know, possibly if they need to know more. Willow getting on the computer to find that, oops, there are also other missing girls, as a year ago today has some posts about it, and Giles thinking it's aligned with significance of a killer. Willow alarmed, they need to research where Buffy found that bracelet. Reaching for the phone again to call Buffy, Willow persuading him, oh, well then call Angel. He was there when Buffy found it. And I'm like, Willow is coming through hot this episode, like as far as keeping Buffy off the tail until she actually has to admit it later. Oh, she's cleverly decepting the fuck out of Giles. Like
But I
100%.
my whole thing immediately was like, "Does Angel have a phone?"
Yeah, because Giles called him to talk to him in Prophecy. Well, before Prophecy Girl, he's like, "Can you meet me to talk about this thing?" And blah 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 blah.
Oh, that's true.
They called him another time before. I can't remember exactly for what, but
They just
they've
never show his end. They never show him on the phone.
listen. And this is an argument that we will get into in the future about Angel. But I don't understand how Angel has this apartment, because he has no identification, like to say that he's this actual person. How does he get a phone
He
line?
killed someone and
Because he
he's
can't
living in
call.
their apartment.
It must be. I mean, I don't think he killed somebody, but I mean, like, I don't know how this
Found
all
a
works out.
bando.
We're gonna play around with this in a future time for sure.
Angel's an urban explorer.
Yeah,
He's living
well,
in an abandoned house.
listen, we'll get there, because that's basically what's happened at the factory with Spike and all them vampires. They live in a bando. So we'll get
Alright.
there towards mid-season for sure about Angel's whereabouts, and I'll make a crack about some Urbex. Then I'm sure you will as well, which will be fun because I think we'll be watching that episode together in person. Probably for real at that point, because we'll be living in the same area. Exactly. Either way, Giles agrees with Willow, and I guess he calls Angel, and heading back over to the party, which has now died down and people are vacating, including a harassed Xander who is like, nah, my friends are still here. Like, I gotta find them. But the guys ignore him and shut him the fuck out. As we head down to the basement, where it's looking very candlelit, giving the Master's Lair vibes, as the men are in their lovely robes again, and Richard is cutting diamonds into Tom's back with the sword. What is up with the diamonds? I guess diamond being like, if you get diamonds,
Like
you're in the riches
wealthy.
and stuff. Wealth,
Mhm.
yeah, maybe that's it. We nailed
Mhm.
it. We figured it out ourselves. Buffy and Cordelia are now chained to the wall and conscious. Cordelia asking Buffy where the fuck they are. Buffy taking in and saying, it looks like a basement. And I'm like, obviously. Cordelia confused. Buffy is like, they drugged us. And Cordelia ponders why would they want them and says aloud she just wants to go home as Callie calls her out chained near them. And she's like, no one is going home. Claiming that Tom is different than the others, the one to watch out for, as his buds drape him in a green robe, different from their brown ones. They got all the crusty, dusty, brown, dookie colored ones, and fucking he's got the damn green one. But I'm like, Snake is green, and I was like, this guy is the epitome of Snake. Let's see. Hold on. I didn't click on my thing. He looks over to Buffy, who is assessing her chains. She's last, he says. And I was like, ooh. And Cordelia is saying, last? For what? Who's first? And she does not let this go for a second. She needs to fucking know. He grabs a sachet and drops 3 stones into his hand. Buffy connected the 3 dots, aka 3 stones, 3 of them. He cleanses the stones with water from a chalice, basically looking like me every ritual I do with my crystals. Fucking full moon water. He's got this damn full moon water. He said this is from an Aries full moon. Just kidding. This is giving Scorpio full moon vibes.
Definitely.
Murder, decay, death, all the things. Cordelia starts to scold Buffy at this point, and the look on Buffy's fucking face right here when Cordelia says, why did I ever let you talk me into coming here?
The hardest eye roll ever.
Okay, Cordy, this is so fucking funny because, of course, we know this is the direct opposite of what happened. Cordy is a character, man. She's over here willingly blaming anyone but herself. Why did I ever let you talk me into coming here? And Buffy's like, bitch.
I hope you're
like,
first.
You drugged me fucking here. Cordelia is first. That monster goes to grab her first. Mostly because Buffy's broken out of her chains by that point, but we're not there yet. We're with Angel now with Willow and Giles in the library, and they're explaining that in the cemetery, Buffy found the bracelet near its south wall. Willow's seen just eyeing the glass behind Angel, and Giles calling out, what are you doing? And Willow is stunned by Angel's no reflection, basically being like Giles in Out of Mind, Out of Sight, whenever he was like, oh, no reflection. This is crazy. This is astonishing. And then Willow's like, Angel, how do you shave?
That was my favorite. Willow was really on a roll this episode, I must say.
Mm-hmm. I love Willow so much. She goes on to say, South Wall, that's near the college, and the frat house. And Angel's like, you think they could be taking the girls there? And she's like, she's shaking her head, and she's like, yes, nervously. And then Angel's like, well, let's go. And he and Giles start to head off, and Willow's frantic behind them, calling out like, Buffy is there with Cordelia. They went to a party. And Giles questioning, she lied to me? And Angel's like, did she have a date? Willow being like, well, to both of them, and they both appear very frustrated, and then we get the best fucking Willow scene ever. She starts to ask,
Why do you think she went to that party? Because you gave her the brush off. And you never let her do anything except work and patrol. And I know she's the chosen one, but you're killing her with the pressure. I mean, she's 16 going on 40. And you! I mean, you're gonna live forever. You don't have time for a cup of coffee?
hopefully it's froth. Willow collects herself and then calmly states,
Okay. I don't feel better now, and you've got to help Buffy.
It was what was needed for the moment because I was waiting for this moment and I didn't know who was going to deliver this information or when, but I knew that there was going to be a moment where both of them got a reality check because they both needed a reality check. And I'm so happy that it came from Willow because she was like my least likely suspect to have this delivery. But at the end of it, it couldn't have been more perfect. And I was like, you know what? I think that Willow is my new favorite.
It's perfect that it comes from Willow. Of everybody else, you never expect Willow to have this moment at all, and she's the one that steps the fuck up. And this is once again giving fucking best friend energy because this bitch is a stand for Buffy, and she also is an outsider looking in on this too and is able to call it like she sees it. So she does. She calls it. She yells it, actually. Outside of the frat house, Xander is walking off the lawn. He's like, I gotta fucking leave now. But takes notice to Cordelia's car still being parked outside. And down in the basement, Tom is praying to Makita, saying that they call upon him, basically honoring him and stating that they have offerings once again to keep them rich and powerful as trade. Cordelia calling them a cult to Buffy. She's like, Buffy, they're a cult. And stating she needs to do something. Now she's looking at Buffy being like, do something. When he states that they're offering, Cordelia's like, are they talking about us? And Callie smarts off to her, which is so funny. She's like, do you see anyone else chained up in here, dumbass? Tom picks up the stones and drops them one by one down into that deep well before him, calling him forth to feast on their humble offerings. Cordy telling Buffy he's going to throw them down there with something, and Buffy stating, I don't think so. I don't think we go to it. I think it comes to us. We start to hear a rumble as a huge, long snake-like demon man comes up, rising from it. Buffy starting to struggle in her change as Cordy whimpers out about feeding them to it. Outside the house, Willow, Giles, and Angel have arrived, and they run into Xander disguised in a robe. Willow informing them why they are there, girls missing, frat boys' potential involvement, and Buffy calling Xander out on wearing makeup also. She's like, are you wearing makeup? And he's like wiping his lips. He's like, no. Anyways, moving along. Xander says that he thinks Buffy is still inside with Cordy since her car is still there. Giles questions the robe. Xander saying that he saw some guys going into the basement and how he found this one in the trash. What the fuck you just put on trash and garbage garments? It's called the garbage garments. It's the garbage garments for me. And he was going to use it to sneak in. Giles saying that they might be involved in some ritual. Willow adding with the missing girls as we hear snarling, panning over to Angel and Vamp Face, stating,
with Buffy.
And why am I so turned on right now? Like, even saying it right now, like I have to push my hair off my neck and hope he bites it. That shit's hot. Like, this motherfucker is like, with Buffy. Like, just the delivery of the line. I'm like, oh fuck, he about to go up in the house and rip all y'all's fucking throats out. Like, let him even go down there and see Buffy on a chain. Nope. This ain't no fucking Rihanna S&M. This ain't no I'm a Slave for You Britney Spears. This is not that. Them songs haven't even come out yet.
Shades of Grey.
Downstairs, Makita moves toward Cordelia as Buffy calls out to him, hey, Reptile Boy, giving us an episode title mention within the episode. And I really think this is like one of the first few times we've really had this happen. Tom hollering out, no woman speaks to him. And I'm like, ugh, like, fucker. Like, of course you would be saying this, fucking patriarchy. Buffy keeps going, though, trying to distract Makita from Cordelia's skin and bones aesthetic. She's like, nothing. You need more meat. Start with me. I'm like, y'all are like literally the same figure. What are you talking about, girl? They're like, start with Callie. Start with this dirty girl over here that looks like she's got dookie smudged all over her face.
Yeah, how long has she been hanging there, by the way?
A hot ass minute, a couple weeks at least. Tom comes over and just backhands Buffy across the face to silence her, bringing her the sword to her throat and threatening another word, and he will slit it. He's like Nixon. Xander knocks on the door outside, head covered by the robe as a guy answers the door, Xander claiming to have been locked out. He's like, I was taking out the garbage and I put on this robe I found in it. Once open, Xander punches the guy out, hurting himself because he's a puss, and Angel enters, punching out another guy, and then the others follow them inside as well. I guess since this is a communal home also with no actual resident present, Angel needs no invitation inside because he just walks inside. And I was like, how do you get in this house? Ain't he got to be invited in? But I'm like, there's like 27 people that live here. So there's not one sole person that is owner of the house. It belongs to like the college, probably essentially. Or the person who pays for the house doesn't actually live there.
It's Angel.
Yes.
He's the owner, that's why.
Tom hears the commotion upstairs and tells the others to go up there. Some other guys bring Cordelia over to Makita, telling him to feed. Buffy pulling hard on her chains, ripping them out of the wall finally, running over to punch Makita in the face and then kick the other guys, taking on Tom. As Angel, Giles, and Xander fend off the guys upstairs, Willow runs to the basement door, seeing what's down there, and then informing them of the girls being down there with a really big snake. She's like, there's also a really big snake. And then they all head down there. We hear in a bit that this has been going on for a while. And are we to think that Makita just eats the 3 girls that they give to them yearly as offerings? And this motherfucker, obviously, as we see, doesn't have a huge ass mouth. He does have like some razor sharp ass looking teeth, but he's like pretty normal man looking when it comes to his head, other than his body style being a snake the rest of the way down. So I'm guessing that's a slow process when he eats. It's not like his mouth enlarges and he gulps the girls down like a actual reptile would eat. You know what I mean? He has to actually gnaw and eat them, like take meat from their body, which to me obviously has to be a gruesome act. And honestly is totally fucked up, because while these 3 offerings are chained up and he's starting on that first one, the other 2 are still sitting over there like in the past, because this has happened on for a long time.
Yes, and
The other 2 had to watch these other girls get eaten and wait, because there's not just first and seconds, there's like first, seconds, and thirds.
I know. Well, then I'm like, why do they have to do 3 girls? Like,
He's hungry. He's down there getting high with Joyce.
Is that the magic number, or is he like disappointed if they just show up with one? He's like, what the fuck is this? This is the appetizer. Like, I need all 3.
My guess for 3, though, as far as ritual and stuff goes, obviously we have like Maiden, Mother, Crone. We have the Holy Trinity. 3s are a big like
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
in
Like
a
a
spiritual
collective, like,
sense,
yeah.
they usually equate to a one type thing. So I'm guessing that's why. But I was like, this has got to be fucked up sitting here watching these people get eaten one by one. Like all these people that are predecessors for this happening. I'm like, that's a fucked up scenario, man.
And even if he did down them like a snake, you know what I mean? Like, he gotta size them up first, he's gotta, like, suffocate them first, and then he's gotta swallow them, and then they would still have to watch all that, so either which way, it's like, I changed my mind, I wanna go first.
Lich the Sitch. Well, Tom calls Buffy a bitch and how he will serve her in pieces to Makita, swinging at her with the sword, her dodging it, and wrapping her chains around his neck, pinning him, telling him,
Tom, you talk too much.
I noticed for the first time that there's a shrine behind Buffy that's lit with candles that it's like a wood carving of an estate looking home, like a really nice fancy looking home. And on top of that, there's a statue of a snake that's twisting around human heads and stuff. I thought it was cool that they add this little small attention to detail in the episode, but obviously as an offering, this shrine is there to honor Makita and say like our home and our frat house is like the basin of all these riches and stuff. And then like the god up above is like to whom we serve type thing.
Mhm.
I thought it was a really cool attention to detail, like I
That
was
is really
saying.
cool, I didn't pay any attention, but that is really cool.
Yeah. Buffy slings Tom away, retrieving his sword, running over to Makita, who is attempting to grab Cordelia and gobble her up, yelling out, "Let her go, wormy," and slicing the blade down onto his snake-like tail, cutting him in half as he falls down to his death. And this is the most cheesy death, too, because he's just like, like, I don't know. You just see his face, like, he's like, literally does what I'm doing on camera right now. He's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But regardless, she slayed the fuck out of this bitch, and, can't get a 2K per slay here, but it was a pretty cool, Buffy saved the day death.
It was $100 per sleigh.
Yeah, no, they probably spent a lot more than that on this fucking costuming and the time. Like, I bet that motherfucker had to sit there for like 8 hours to get his face painted like this and the chest plate put on and all the things.
Do you think they're sad after they spend all this money and, like, take all this time to make something like that to inevitably just have it, like, stabbed to pieces, and then they're like, "Well, there goes that 5K."
Yeah, and I'm sure like that was cut in half. I will say that I think later they reused this costuming to do something else with, not necessarily a snake or something like that, but I think they take components of it. Either that or there's another future monster that they reuse. They do that a couple times in the show, actually, like tweak the outfit for demons and like
Mm,
the
that
prosthetics
makes
and
sense.
stuff. Yeah. I feel like I remember it. Whenever we get there, I'll be like, oh, this is that time or whatever, if it does come up. It might not be Makita, but it also might be. We'll see. Cordelia calling out, "You did it! You saved us!" and making us think that she's talking to Buffy, and then she just walks up to Angel, hugging onto him, claiming she's never been so happy to see anyone in her whole. And then she doesn't even finish her sentence because she's whining, and she's like, "You guys, I just hate you guys." She starts to walk out, but then Willow and Xander are seen in the background helping Callie out of the basement. And she continues, "The weirdest things always happen when you're around." Angel walking by with Tom grasped in his hands, and Cordy grabs him by his robe and like yanks him up, and she's like, "And you're going to jail for 15,000 years." Like, yes, he's going to be alive for 15,000 years, Cordelia. But she's just very accentuating the fact that he's going away for fucking ever. Everyone starts to head out the basement, leaving Buffy and Giles behind. Buffy looks to him, admitting she told one lie and had one drink. Giles agreeing yes, and she was nearly devoured by a giant demon snake. Stating the words, "Let that be a lesson," may be a tad redundant at this juncture. She says she is sorry, him replying, "So is he," going on to tell her that he drives her too hard because he knows what she has to face. From now on, though, there will be no more pushing, no more prodding, just an inordinate amount of nudging. She smiles at him as the two head out of the basement. Cutting to a future evening at the Bronze, Jonathan is seen retrieving a muffin and coffee from the counter, bringing it over to Cordelia, her almost saying thanks, but he's forgotten her extra foam, and she sends him off to go fix her fucking coffee, aka this is us, all the foam. Not all the things, all the foam. Cordelia walks by Buffy's table where her and Willow and Xander sit, commenting to them, "Young men are the only way to go." So it seems like Cordelia's learned a little bit of a lesson, and she's like entertaining the idea of dating Jonathan because we know that this is not going to last. Xander reads from the newspaper about how the guys had been investigated and sentenced after missing girls' bones had been found in a cavern beneath the frat house dating back 50 years. I know I'm talking about some 400 years ago, but literally 50 years, 53 girls a fucking year. Let's do the fucking math real quick.
50, no?
Yes, 150 fucking people have died. Well, maybe not this one. Well, I mean, if it's on the mark 50, this might have been the 51st year.
Yeah,
uh,
maybe. Way 147 to 150 girls have died.
That's wild. That's wild. And Xander also reads that the former Delta Zeta Kappa men are suffering from poverty, all their bounty now stripped away. Starve a snake, lose a fortune. And this also happened in American Horror Story Coven. There's a scene towards the end of the season where Jessica Lange's character does this like spell with rats and puts them in a maze and makes them like go to these things. I don't know. It makes sense if you're watching the episode, but that's how the scene plays out. And the spell that she's doing is supposed to take down this like corporate group that's like run by men that are trying to execute witches based on some like
Donald
a big exactly, essentially it's like some big like, you know, lineage of just like what we're seeing in this episode. And the spell like basically in seconds, like you clip to the next part of the scene and like there people are on this phone struggling, like the FBI are busting into these people's chambers and got all these files and receipts and like saying y'all been doing this sketchy ass shit, blah 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 blah.
Oh,
Basically
shit.
that's what happened to these guys.
Yeah.
And I also want to comment too, everyone also argues the timeline of this shit, because how far into the future are we? As we see in the paper, that's been a whole trial and judgment on what these guys did. Like that would be
It happened in an hour.
exactly, that would like be a whole lot of an investigation and like proceeding of hearings and all this other stuff would happen before the trial really took place. Cutting out the trial from it, I mean, it makes sense to try to wrap this shit up quick to let us know that the guys are in jail, but that's all they had to do was say the stuff that they found upon their investigation, like all the bones in the house, and that the guys are being housed in jail and will face a trial. And then that also that the other people that have been predecessors of the frat house lineage are also going bankrupt and having problems happening. That's something that could occur because that would be like immediate after Makita's dead. His spell work isn't happening anymore for these fuckers.
Yeah, true. Totally true.
Willow goes on with Buffy about Angel and how he turned, in her words, changed into grrr to save her, and how it was a whole ass amazing moment that she witnessed. Xander being like, Angel, 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 does every conversation have to come around to that freak? As Angel walks up and he's just like, what's up, man, to Angel, like in the same motion. Angel clearly heard him and he's just like, yeah, man, what's up? Hey, you're here. Like these two just have this like bro code now, I guess, at this point, because they have disdain for one another.
Yeah.
But Angel's nicer about it. Angel looks to Buffy, stating that he heard this place serves coffee. Thought maybe she would like to get some sometime, if she wants. She smiles, agreeing sure, sometime. She'll let him know. She gets up, leaving, walking off, smiling to herself, and we fade to black, and here endeth the episode.
Yay.
I think that was interesting, like, that she just walks off the screen. Like, she didn't say bye to anybody or anything. She just leaves.
I notice she has to do that a lot, especially I think when Angel's involved. I feel like she has more of a notion to like keep him guessing or keep him hanging or that kind of like interaction is how I picked up on that. I was like, I bet you she gonna leave right after she says this, and then she did, and I was like, I knew it.
Right? I mean, she's done it multiple times before, and it would not be the last time she does such, aka 3 episodes from now.
It's her trademark.
Actually, she does it the next episode. Oh, I can't wait to get the next episode. Anyways, let's finish up this one. Metaphor for this one. Back in the realm of growing up in adulthood, this one tackles themes of adulthood being viewed by younger folk as a place where adult themes such as sex, drinking, and partying comes into context. Freedom to do as you want, essentially. Buffy in the beginning is having the dialogue with Willow about her. We'll call it sexy dream with Angel. Then later in the graveyard, she has that interaction with him where it seems that both he and her are at a war with themselves over their relationship. Should they, shouldn't they, is like the whole energy of that. Buffy is not just toying with the idea of entering an adult-ish relationship, but one that is with a vampire many, many years older than her. Another theme in this episode, older men taking advantage of women. Now, I don't believe Angel is taking advantage of Buffy, but that's definitely a thing that happens, and we see that play out in the energy of the frat house men. Typical as fuck. Buffy and Angel, though, she tells him when he kisses her that she wants to die. Very Shakespearean in the sense of the various metaphors available for the vampire's bite. Little death, aka an orgasm, is how Shakespeare sums that up, aka the sexual metaphor from this intimate nature of death, passion, etc. Sex is one of those things that adolescents tend to think of as an adult mindset. And what adults can engage in as far as activity goes. And then the rest of the episode deals with Buffy's desire to be treated as an adult. Giles tries to tell her romance is just a distraction from her destiny. Themes continuing from season 1 after he criticizes her for blowing off trainings recently. Buffy resists Giles' advice and ends up lying to her metaphorical conscience in order to go to the party because the pressure her destiny causes is making her tired of being mature. The consequence getting spelled out via metaphor, well, quite literally, she's drugged and then nearly devoured by a snake monster, aka a penis-shaped monster, because, the subtext is texting in full-on form. We all know the representation of a penis when we see it. Not to mention the rapey vibes that we get along here, as we almost saw that shitty scene with Richard. Thankfully did not happen. But Buffy slays the demon by cutting the phallic-shaped being in half in the end as well.
Lorena Bobbitt your ass.
Yeah, 100%. And in the end, we see that Buffy's regained control of herself, including her fantasies about Angel. First, Cordelia, her shadow self, which is a big thing. We're going to always tie back to that in some way. As we've discussed, lures her to the party and then later swears off older boys as we see her entertaining Jonathan at the end. Cordelia is always going to be the theme for Buffy of the path not taken, essentially. And Buffy then tells Angel, who's very much older, that she will let him know about coffee, showing that she's in thought now about her actions and what this could mean for them, and giving herself more space to develop the option and give herself time to decide versus rushing into a decision on them at this time. Rather mature, wouldn't you say?
Very.
Yeah. So that's basically metaphor for this episode. And how that kind of
That's a
ties
lot.
up. A good little bit, but I actually really like it because all those themes are present within the episode. And, Buffy has consequences to her actions and still manages to save the day, but it's like a big learning lesson for Buffy. And on a sideline for like her and Angel's relationship more than anything, because that's the subtext that's going on when the actual other stuff is going on, like the theme of maturity and adulthood, growing up as a person and engaging in adult-like activities. Very, very big and present in front of our faces.
That's so true. Even though I feel like Cordy's the only one who's like only thinking with one side of her brain this episode, I guess, until the very end. You know what I mean? Like the conscience is missing and the metaphor is missing because Cordy's just like, I'm thinking about myself. Until consequences.
These bitches just living life on the Hellmouth.
I really enjoyed this episode. I feel like I can't imagine why it's rated one of the lower ones, especially next to iRobot. Like no, there's not even that's not the same. Even though that was one of our longest episodes, and we obviously really liked bantering about it. But yeah, to me, I feel like I genuinely like this episode, and typically I wouldn't because of the like rapey vibes or whatever. But once I got past that, and I really saw there was almost the sense of like feminine power or women empowerment just as much as there was the opposite side of that. So I really appreciated the balance and that there wasn't like one outweighed the other or you got too much of one. It was very like well rounded in that regard. And I feel like the one thing that stood out to me the most that was super random was the fact that I loved Xander this episode because he to me was like the most aware. 'Cause he was like, "I'm going to this party, like, I've got to be physically present, something obviously feels off," like, he even after they humiliated him and treated him like a pledge and made him run around in bra and underwear and makeup and a wig, he still was like, "I'm going back in." You know what I mean? So I was, like, kind of impressed with Xander this episode, and I didn't really feel like I would feel that way because once it started with the pack energy, I was like, "If they make Xander rapey again, I'm just gonna turn the show off. You have to find a new co-host."
Oh my god. It never happens again. I will spoil that, thankfully.
Well, thankfully.
But he does piss us off again.
I was bothered that Seth Green wasn't in this episode, to be honest with you. I wrote
Yeah.
that in my notes. I was like, "Where's Seth?"
He's back for next episode.
Thank God.
I'll tell you that. Spoiler. That's your spoiler. All right, great. Well, even though it is a filler monster of the week, I still like the fact that Buffy's roped into some crazy stuff once again, and we have Cordelia mirroring her this whole episode as the shadow self stand-in. Not only does this do a good job with the enhancement and subtext for metaphor, but it brings in some good viewing for us as the watchers. Getting to see Buffy in this element is a good switch up, and it carries a different tone because obviously we also have the different location setting for this episode as well. And we get to see how we are facing a demon this week versus like vampires or Spike, because he's not present for this and it's not carrying on the initial storyline and arc that's coming for that. And it's interesting too because Buffy's always at the wrong place at the right time, and I really feel like there's these higher powers. It's not this isn't canon or anything. I'm not giving away anything because there's not higher powers looking after Buffy, but I feel like the intuition and the Slayer gift attracts her to these instances. Like, I get it, Sunnydale and the Hellmouth hones in on weird shit popping up all the time, but the Slayer energy within her almost seems to put her at the area that she's meant to do some good at. Like, she just happens to fall into the situation, which finally helps to put a stop to the stuff that's been going on at this location for 50 years. Now Buffy's ended a cycle karmically for this bullshit. You know what I mean? And we also, once again, have some shady ass people in the world, and in Sunnydale at that. No duh. It's just as bad as the monsters and shit, essentially right in line with them. Like, these monsters and humans might as well just be holding hands, skipping down the fucking street at this point. I really enjoy the trope in the situation of offering the sacrifice for riches in exchange, because this is something that, like last episode, in a little bit of a different way, but it's like the sacrifice to get something back in gain. Obviously, they were doing that with Ampada last episode. Well, not Ampada, but whoever the Incan mummy really name was. I can't remember. Ampasta. But like, it's a big theme, because anybody who practices rituals and religious root magical workings, they always give an offering to something to like get something back in return of state. So I like the themes being present here, in it kind of in a different way, but also mirroring it. And I also saw, upon some of my research for the episode, just for fun facts and different things like that, the last episode is called Inca Mummy Girl, and this episode directly after it, which is kind of linked in a way, that this one's called Reptile Boy. So we get the themes, like you were saying, the dualic forces of masculine and feminine energy. Last episode was a little bit more feminine empowerment, whereas this one's kind of like tying the both together, as you said, but we also get the heavy dose of masculine, but we're also dealing with like Buffy as the sense of feminine, you know. It's nice as well to see Willow in this episode scold Angel and Giles, because without Buffy really knowing it, she is the reason that Angel comes around to putting an effort in his growing relationship with her. And the same for Giles. She is the voice of reason in his head by delivering the same perspective spoken differently and at a different angle than Buffy tried to tell Giles earlier in the episode about being, you know, a 16-year-old girl who's the Slayer and all that. So big thanks to Willow for whipping these men into shape and granting them both the chance to ponder some perception, because I wanted to comment on the apparent growth that Willow has had, like just from where we saw her last season building up into this season. Her confidence levels have increased immensely in comparison to how she used to be, and this is just growing more and more and more. Now she's like taking charge and she's like calling shit as she sees it, and I love to see it. So it's great for her character development, and for this episode to not have anything really fully to do with Willow in a bigger way, or Willow centric. Willow's taking the reins to like be the one that's growing pretty much the most, other than Buffy herself, you know. Because it's obviously not Cordelia. But speaking on Cordelia again, like, she's hilarious in this one, even though she's got some warped view on some shit. I don't like her treatment of Buffy, but I like what she brings to this. I just feel, honestly, at the end of the day, to make a fun punny joke, I think she could do a smidge better. Come on, Cordelia, it's just a smidge. Anyways, moving on to some fun facts. Passion of the Nerd on YouTube calls the scenes between Buffy and Angel Bangel speak, aka when two people should just shut their pie holes and start kissing, but instead they go on pointless melodramatic like moments about how they can't do that, you know. And this will be seen throughout the show in different ways, like that Buffy and Angel always do this. Like, they're always like, no, we can't do this, we can't, you know. It's just this, just shut up and kiss.
It's the tortured love.
It really is. The term patrolling is also first used in this episode, replacing the show's original statement of hunting. Giles used to ask how the hunt went. Now it's being put out there that she'll go on patrol. So she's patrolling the streets, basically. So we'll see that mentioned across the rest of the show for the rest of the run. The spelling of the word Makita, but with a T instead of the D, because it's Makita, but Makita is the name of the set equipment that they ordered from Japan and they used on set for filming and all this other stuff. And David Greenwalt didn't know this at the time when he came up with the name of the demon, but I think unconsciously he had seen the name Makita on the set, and then he wrote the name of the demon, and somebody like apparently called him out on it. But that's where they got the name from the demon, sort of from, even though David Greenwalt says he came up with it on his own. I think he just, like I said, saw some stuff subconsciously. It was there.
I thought you were about to say that, like, whenever he was given, you know, like, script work or anything, like, information to develop all of this, that in parentheses they put, like, Makita because the demon didn't have a name, so they just, like, put what they used to make the demon, and so he was like, Makita, like, you know, Joey on Friends when he's
Yeah.
like, long pause. And they're like, "You're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to have a long pause."
This motherfucker's an actor reading scripts and he can't do shit. Poor Joey. I also want to say, getting back into the name Makita, whenever I was in ninth grade and started my high school journey, I was in band, and there was a girl in my band class, and I'm thinking she was a senior because I don't remember her being there years after, but her name was Makita with a T. And I remember like meeting her, and immediately I'm obsessed with Buffy. You know what I mean? I've been obsessed with Buffy for like 5-6 years at this point. And I walked up to her and I was like, when I found out her name, I was like, "Did you know your name is also the name of a demon in the second season of Buffy?" And she just looked at me and I was like, "I just thought it was cool. I was just telling you." And she's like, "Okay." She did not give a fuck. But I'll never forget that girl. Like, I think she played trumpet or the French horn in band.
That's
Um,
so funny.
so shout out to you, Makita. If you're listening to the podcast, I didn't forget you, even though I know you forgot me.
You're like, "I did until now."
Xander comments, "Okay, boots, start a walkin'," whenever he wants Buffy to leave. And that's obviously a reference to the song "These Boots Are Made for Walking," that 70s song. You know, like, "Don't go knock it," or whatever. Hold on. "I know something, you got something for me." Like, I don't know the lyrics, but
Mhm.
I like that song. It's fun. It's like,
Just put it in.
yeah. No, I'm going to leave it like that. And then originally Makita survived this episode, and the cut footage of the scene, and like the other, take that they did, Tom comes near the altar, and unbeknownst to any of the heroes, the snake begins slowly moving until it joins up the torso again and comes back together. And Cordelia, whenever she says, "You're going to jail for 15,000 years," she's like, "Oh God, it's over. It's really over." And then that's when Makita rejoins and suddenly pops up again. Angel takes a step toward Buffy to defend her. Makita towers over Tom and says, "For 100 years I have given you forebears, wealth, and power, and this is how you repay me. For this day forth you will be alone in the world." Makita slides back down. Cordelia is afraid to breathe, with good reason, and Makita pops back up and grabs Tom, and it says, "One for the road." And Makita disappears into the pit with Tom, and we hear Tom screams a quick couple of chomps and then silence.
Oh
And
gosh.
that was
Oh my
originally how they possibly were going to end the scene. I'm glad they didn't do all that. Maybe they could have had him pop up and like take the demon down, but we don't want the demon alive anymore. We wanted him to stay dead. So
Yeah, no, I don't want any resurrection of that.
yes, exactly. But yeah, that closes it up on that, and we can move into final slays.
Final slays.
Yeah. I have 3 quotes for this episode. I want to say I wrote down like 9 or AKA 13. I was just popping off on quotes because they were whatever. So I had to narrow it down to the 3 that I liked the most. My first one was Giles whenever he was saying in the library, "Just because the paranormal has been less para of late," is my first one. And then Buffy whenever she says, "Who needs your own social life when you got your very own hellmouth?" And then Giles is like, "Yes, exactly." And she's like, "What the fuck?" And then my third one is, since we have a big presence of her, we had to get a Cordy quote. And I like the one where she's like, "Oh, Buffy, it's like we're sisters, but with very different hair." And that one is specifically for Sarah over at Becoming Buffy, because whenever we first started doing the podcast, I was messaging her about stuff, and this came up in conversation, and I sent her like the clip from the episode as a joke because we were talking about, I was like telling her we're podcast sisters or something dumb like that. And then I sent her that clip and she was like, "Oh, I love that scene." I'm like, "All right, great."
That's funny. My quotes are 2 Willow quotes, to be honest with you, and they follow right after each other, and I just couldn't figure out which one I like the most, and I did not wanna quote her whole entire spiel, but I really thought it was great when she was like, "Angel, how do you shave?"
I had a feeling you were gonna choose that one. When I said it, I literally thought it was gonna be your quote.
And then the second one was when she was like, "You're gonna live forever and you don't even have time for coffee." I was like, I mean, that is probably the most legit point you could make to Angel right now, so yeah.
She preaching for all the people who love coffee, aka us as
Uh,
coffee stands.
she said she graduated from ice cream to coffee because maturity is the vibe.
Something me and Courtney always have time for, a cup of coffee. This
I
is
think the next time someone tries to tell me they don't like coffee, because you know you run into those people sometimes, the next time that happens to me, I'm gonna be like, "When I was your age, I didn't like adult things either."
Courtney, that is like the hugest turn on for me whenever somebody can quote something back from Buffy. I swear to God, if I never wanted you before, I want you so bad now. I
But
want to
tell
see
me
the.
you're not gonna say that to everyone about everything when they're, like, trying to diss something that you know is good, and you're like, when
Mm,
I was your age, I didn't like that
I'm
either."
100% saying it. Moving
Okay.
along, let's get into Shining Slayer.
Honestly, I'm gonna double back and say it was Xander because I know, I'm so sorry, but I had to give it to Xander. I just felt like if he I know that they ended up showing up at the end, all of them did, but Xander was there. He, like, snuck in on his own, even though he showed up looking like a 55-year-old man. It was still the initiative and just his knowing of, like, I have to put myself in the physical presence of the situation because it feels off, and I
Mhm.
felt like it was surpassed his jealousy reasons. I don't think he was doing it just because he was, like, jealous of other dudes or anything like that. I think he sincerely was, like, aware that there might be some element of danger
As
involved
usual.
because well, yeah, that and because obviously they just these dudes did not have the best vibes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I gave it to Xander this time. What about you?
Mine is Willow.
Mm,
And for all the reasons I stated in my final thoughts on how she demanded Angel and Giles see Buffy differently and acknowledging the reality of things, aka for delivering the reality check that they both needed, as you also said. I was like, time
mhm.
for them to take that to the bank and deposit it. Little Wayne. But no, I gave it to Willow. And I like it because we gave it to Buff. Each of us gave it to Buffy's second hand in commands when it's not Giles. You know what I mean? So yeah, I like that we chose Buffy's best buds for our
Same.
Shining
Yeah.
Slayers because they were.
And I for the same reasons, I saw Willow for that too, that was kind of like my reflex choice because I was like, obviously this stands out the most. Like Willow gave her whole speech and finally made everyone fucking aware of what they needed to be made aware of. And they actually showed up to initiate those changes that she basically was trying to put in place for them to improve Buffy's quality of life. So yeah, she definitely deserves that place. But again, Xander's level of awareness was kind of the level of awareness that Buffy usually has.
Mhm.
And since she was like on her self-sabotaging phase because she wasn't giving a fuck about nothing but Angel and her feelings were hurt, she was like, all right, I'll let them drug me. Let me tip this back. No awareness.
Well, they are a good follow-up to one another because, like you said, Xander was already on site doing all of this.
Mhm.
Willow figured out what the bracelet meant and realized that the fraternity had something in mind to it. So even if Xander hadn't been there, they still all would have been brought to it by Willow if it hadn't been for Xander. Like
That's true.
noticing that the car wasn't there because him noticing that if he couldn't get inside and take it on himself, I'm surprised he didn't try to find a phone and call them and let them know like, hey, I'm at this is what's happening, all this other stuff. Because Xander about to get gobbled up by that snake too, if that's the case, or they're gonna kill his
You
ass.
are
Like
right.
either way. Weekly wigs. Mine is the frat house and all the levels of high testosterone we saw and all the frat fuckers, aka Tom and Richard. Then Xander dancing around the bra, but that's just more for a joke. But all of that, like the frat house and everything that it had to stand for and everything going on with it, that was giving me the extreme weekly wigs.
Mhm. Yeah. I think in totality, obviously the monster of the week this week gave me the weekly wigs. But I feel
Makita.
like yeah, Makita has the potential to take the top weekly wigs for the season so far because I'm just like it's a little and now that we have more backstory on the details of how he was inspired, I'm like, I'm allergic to this whole situation. Like as a lesbian, I must say. So he was the biggest wigs for me this week.
Got it. All right. Well, Slayerette predictions. The next episode that we are coming to will be episode 6, and it is entitled Halloween. What do you think will be happening in this one?
Oh my god, well, how am I to guess? Anything can happen on Halloween.
It's a Halloween themed episode.
Oh gosh, and that makes it more scary because any Halloween themed anything, oh, there's always the element of you not knowing what the fuck's going on even more than usual because everyone's dressed up and everybody looks like they're in a disguise. And yeah, it's just gonna be a fucked up episode, I can already tell.
Yep, but it's also really fun. It's the coolest take on a Halloween episode for a show that I've ever seen, especially one dealing with supernatural stuff. It's
Does
it's
the
really
group dress
cool.
up in costumes? If so, I wanna show up to record the next episode in one of the costumes.
Absolutely. No. But I really like it. I'll put it this way too. If I had to write out a top 10 list from season 2, this is in my top 5 of episodes. It's always been a big favorite for me. I really like this episode, and it's the one of the funnest ones we've had so far on Buffy in general, and it's
Ooh,
got some
ooh.
really cool elements that get presented to us, and it's going to be a fun fucking ride. when we get there. So,
I'm excited.
yes. Well, that brings us to a close on Reptile Boy. Thanks, as always, to those listening to our recap. What do you guys think of this one? Do you place it in your lower ranking Buffy episodes? And how do you feel about the dynamics for Buffy as a Slayer with Giles and just a girl with Angel? I'm just a girl in the world. I don't know why that just popped in my head, but let us know by sending us a message to let us know who gets the award for Shining Slayer and who was giving you guys the weekly wigs. I'm ultra excited to get to the next episode because we have a guest joining us for that recording. So be sure to tune in. Until then, get your Halloween costumes ready, and we will see you guys back here next week for some spooky vibes in Sunnydale.
Okay, you know what? Look, 7 days a week, I'm busy saving the world. Once in a great while, I want to have some fun. That's what I'm going to have tonight. Fun.
This isn't about fun. This is about duty, your duty, to help me achieve permanent prosperity. Okay? Do's and don'ts. Don't wear black, silk, chiffon, or spandex. These are my trademarks. And don't do that weird thing with your hair.
What weird thing with
Don't interrupt. Do be interested if someone should speak to you. It may or may not happen, but do be polite and laugh at the appropriate intervals. Do lie to your mom about where we're going. It's a fraternity and there will be drinking.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Buffy on Revamped. Remember to join us next week for a new episode release as we continue our journey through Sunnydale. We also would like to hear from you, so share your thoughts. Discuss with us your perspectives on this or previous week's episodes by following us on Instagram and sending us a DM at revamped_rewatch podcast.
Or by emailing us at revampedrewatchpod@gmail.com. Additionally, we will be choosing one of your messages to shout out in an upcoming episode release. And don't forget, if you're looking for a friend and some unsolicited advice for the times when life feels out of orbit, go follow Life in Retrograde podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
Until next time, the Earth is definitely doomed. This podcast is dedicated to the Buffyverse, to its fans, and my sister, Tiffany Dawn Pearson.